I'm 15 and I'm extremely interested in fountain pens. I've decided that I would like to take a step further into fountain pendom and become a nibsmith or nibmeister, someone who grinds nibs or does nib work on pens. I'm not know the proper term for them. I was wondering, how can I take this step and how would I learn? Thanks, Joe. All right, Joe. I think nibmeister is a pretty common term. Nibsmith is, a way. The Nibsmith is Dan Smith. I think he has a play on words with his name there. But, Nibmeister, I think, is the more common terminology. But, there's no official school for this kind of thing, so you could pretty much call yourself whatever you want. It's whatever the general public refers to you as. That was terrible grammar, but whatever you are commonly known, that is what your name could be. So anyway, I think the Nibmeister is fairly appropriate. There's no a kind of official training or schooling or even books that I'm aware that are out there for doing this kind of thing. So I think it's cool that you're interested in this. I do think that there is an underserved market for nib tuning and pen repair and stuff like that. I think it's something that I would consider to be a true craft, like a trade craft today. So it's in the traditional days before you had higher education and things like that, you would have a trade and you would become an apprentice to more of a master or a journeyman, or and so you would have a master tradesman who would do their thing. Say you were a carpenter, right? Like you would be a carpenter, master carpenter, and you would have somebody who would come on, be an apprentice, and then as they chose that was their trade, they'd be a journeyman, and they would learn how to do it until they became a master of their own, and then they took on their own apprentices, right? Like that was a very common thing for thousands of years. Not as popular today, especially in the US, but I consider the whole Nibmeister thing really more of a kind of a traditional trade because it's very skilled labor. It's very much of a craftsmanship is heavily involved in that. And the individual that's doing it really puts their stamp on their own methods and things like that. So it's got a lot of that. And there's not really a lot of formal training involved. So the people that I know that are doing it now pretty much either learned it from somebody else or taught themselves how to do it and just kind of figured it out. So those are pretty much your two methods for learning how to do it, to be quite honest with you. I don't know a lot of people that are really getting into it. I've heard of some people that have gotten into it a little bit and done it for a while and then kind of gotten out of it. Younger folks especially, man, I just think there's such an opportunity to get into it if you are somewhat entrepreneurial minded. I think the logistics of managing the business side of it is probably what trips most people up, because I know from doing the e-commerce thing here, the logistics that are involved with doing that can be kind of overwhelming. And if you get into it because you really love nibs and pens and tuning stuff, you can do well at going to shows and stuff like that because you can get a lot of interaction with minimal kind of overhead and minimal logistics involved. But if you're talking about like being in your house and then shipping pens back and forth and everywhere, there's a lot of time involved with that correspondence and tracking and shipping and all that kind of stuff that can really bog you down. And if you have not figured out a good process for that, that can be kind of difficult to overcome. Plus kind of getting your name out there, it takes a little while to get it going. So if you have to really kind of overcome that. So I think in terms, and that's like once you have the skill, right? So I think that, there's some videos out there that some people have done. I've done some very basic tuning videos, nothing that I would, say you should start charging money for after you just watch my videos, but it can at least help you understand what's going on. There's other people out there that have done it. Stephen Brown's got some great videos. I know Matt Armstrong for Pen Habit has done some. And there's some other folks on YouTube. Just look up, nib tuning, nib grinding, anything like that on YouTube, and just, you're basically gonna have to scrap together whatever knowledge you can get and experiment and try it and figure it out. And you're gonna ruin a lot of nibs in the process, but you're gonna be learning as you go. You got to get your hands on as many junk nibs as you possibly can. So if you're really interested and really passionate about this, I think you can figure out ways to get cheap nibs, whether it's going onto the Fountain Pen Network and saying, hey, does anybody have any throwaway pens that are terrible or don't write well or whatever that you want to send me so I can practice? I want to be a Nibmeister. I want to do this kind of thing. And I think, if you're young enough and if you can kind of have it as, hey, I want to do this thing, I want to be somebody in the pen industry and I want this to be my career, I bet you're going to get some people that have been around for a while that is like, hey, that's really cool. I'd love to help you out. Let me send you some junk pens that I have and you can play around with them. If you just go around asking for handouts, that could turn some people off. But if you say, hey, this is my noble cause, I really want to practice and learn how to do this thing, and you're kind of legit about it, I think you might be able to get a hand up from some individuals who find that to be kind of cool. As far as tools and what you're going to need, it's not a real heavy investment in terms of that stuff. You'll need a loop of some kind, 10x, 15x magnification. You're just going to have to kind of play around and see what fits you. Micro mesh, mylar paper maybe, depending on what you're getting into. A grip, something to grip it, remove stuff. There's a good site called Pen Tooling that is for like pen repair and stuff like that. Dale is pretty cool and has done some good stuff. He's got some kind of more specialized tools. If you find you're really getting into it, he has some more specialized tools that are more of an investment, but that you could get into if you really get into that. And then I would encourage you, if you get the opportunity, there's nothing like observing somebody that knows what they're doing, because you can pick up on stuff so well. If you get a chance to go to any pen show where there are Nibmeisters present, you can usually research who is going to be there. It may not be a full listing, but any of the major shows that you go to, LA, DC, and a bunch of other Chicago, maybe Chicago, Denver, other things like that, you're going to be able to see Nibmeisters in action there. And if you tell them that you're trying to learn, they'll usually be pretty cool about you just kind of sitting and observing as they work. So if you want to devote a day or a couple of days to going to a show, if you have any near you, and then you want to literally just go and plop down and watch them all day, and then usually, they're working and stuff like that, and if you're not too obnoxious to them and disrupting their work, you may be able to ask them a question here and there. So that could be kind of cool. But I would recommend observing them if you can. I've done that at a couple of shows myself. I've been able to plop down next to Richard Binder or Mike Masayama and just kind of watch them work for a couple of hours. And you learn some really interesting things, especially as they're turning over pens and doing different grinds and doing different things. You get to see their setups, and you can ask them like, oh, that's an interesting tool. Where'd you get that? Oh, I homemade it. Oh, okay. And then, so beyond just the basic like tuning tools, you'll need some grinding equipment, because when you get into some of the stuff, if you want to grind, down a nib size or make obliques or anything like that, a micro mesh is just not going to cut it. You're going to need something more aggressive. And what I see kind of like two different schools of thought in terms of the grinding. Usually it's like some kind of Dremel or some kind of rotary tool that has like a diamond wheel on it. That's not a huge investment, but you need something to hold it in place, and then you have the wheel and you use the diamond grits to do the grind, and then you kind of polish with this stuff. And then the other way that I see is more of like I know Mike Masayama's got a pretty cool homemade machine that he has that is a grinding wheel that actually turns toward him. So it's a very different approach. So if you have the Dremel type apparatus, it's spinning and you're kind of grinding on the side of the grinding wheel. And if you're doing it with a grinding wheel that's moving towards you, it's just a different approach. So, just like any other trade or craft, or if you play an instrument or you do any kind of sports or anything like that, the equipment that you train on and practice on, that will kind of like be the way that you end up going. So, I think the Dremel route is the way that most people end up going, just because the tools are a little more accessible. You don't have to home make your own kind of jig. But that is something that I've observed in doing both here. And then I think, because you're so young, you've got to really want to do this, because it's not going to be just handed to you on a silver platter. It's something that is going to be a very different path than most people would probably ever even understand. If you tell your teacher that you want to do this at school, they're going to be like, what are you even talking about? It's so far outside the norm. But I think personally, there's tremendous opportunity for you to do something like this, or really anybody else. I don't know your raw skill, your talent, anything like that. You have to have some skills. Like, you have to have the goods. You can't just want it and study it. It's kind of like, this is going to be the weirdest analogy ever, but it's like the movie Monsters, Inc. Actually, the movie Monsters University is even more fitting, if you've ever seen that. I have young kids. My analogies are going to be kid movies, but the movie Monsters University, it's a very cute movie. I love it. It's like the origin story for Monsters, Inc. Well, Mike Wazowski wants to be a scarer. He studies it. He wants it so bad ever since he's a kid, and he grows up and he gets to college and he realizes that he just doesn't have that raw talent that's needed. But he becomes a teacher and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, that's the whole story. So you got to have the goods to be able to do it, because it is a skill. And if you just don't have the technical acumen and the handwork to be able to do it, you're gonna have a tough road ahead. So you gotta have that as a baseline, and then you gotta learn how to do all this stuff. So at 15, you're really young, and you have time. You do have time to figure this out. Personally, I think if you're 15, by the time you're 18, if you practice this a lot, I think you can pay your way through college, which I would recommend you do. Maybe go to some kind of like business or finance type schools just so you can learn what's going on, or maybe you just try to teach yourself on the side. I don't know. You know, there's debate about, you know, how relevant higher education is depending on what it is you're trying to do. I think if you don't know what you're going to do, you know, go and get just a general like business education, just because you'll be able to apply a lot of that to whatever it is you end up doing. But that's the route that I ended up going. So anyway, if you are able to kind of devote yourself over the next 3 years in your spare time, and I mean like really devote yourself, not passively try it an hour or two a week and just kind of cruise fountain pen network. I mean, if you really get hardcore into it, you find pens, you tune it, you try different grinding, you test out equipment, you really make it your passion. You may have to get a part-time job so that you can pay for the equipment that it is that you're going to be buying. You do that for 3 years and you really learn the lingo, you really learn the stuff. You go to some pen shows, you network with some Nibmeisters who are able to teach you little bits here and there, and you can pick up on it and hone and craft and all that. You get some emails and start emailing people, you know, who are willing to give you the time. I think you can do that if you hustle and you kind of make it happen. I think that opportunity is there, but you're going to have to hustle. Like, no one is going to just hand it to you, just especially because you're 15. I know you think like, oh gosh, well, my teachers love to help me, and maybe they would love to have, nobody's really going to like hold your hand through this process. You're going to have to like make it happen on your own if you really want to do it. And that goes for anybody, not even just you're 15, but anybody else that is interested in like Nibmeistering or anything like that, you're really going to have to make it happen. You know, because even me, being Brian Goulet, I have had a hard time getting a hold of any of these Nibmeisters and sitting down with them. And I've been able to at bits here and there, but even with the kind of the pull and the clout that I have, they're very busy people. And they don't necessarily like just want to sit down and train everybody all the time, because, you know, there's a bit of proprietary skill and stuff that they've developed over time, and they don't just like hand that out to everybody. So it's going to be a bit of a tough go. So I just kind of want to set you up for that. But if you are willing to kind of do that, I think the opportunities are pretty cool. So try to find any book, any website, any forum that'll teach you anything, any YouTube video, whatever it is. Hustle and network with as many people that you can in the pen business. And I think even if you have moderate talent, I think you'll at least be able to pay a good way of your portion through school doing this if you're doing it well. And I think you can make it happen, but don't be naive about what it's going to take. So I say go get it, but it's not going to be for everybody. So hopefully that I get to talk to you in a couple of years, and maybe I'll meet you at a future pen show and you can tell me that you're doing it, and that would be really, really cool. So we'll see if that happens. Ciao.